The scent of lye soap burned Helena Vance's nostrils as she scrubbed another blood-stained shirt against the washboard, her knuckles screaming in protest as the skin split open yet again. She was 22 years old and felt like she'd lived 3 lifetimes already, each one harder than the last. The Arizona Territory sun beat down mercilessly on the canvas tent that served as her laundry operation in Sierra Vista, a dusty town that had sprung up near Fort Huachuca in 1877. Helena had been working since dawn, and now as the afternoon stretched long and hot, she had at least 30 more shirts to finish before nightfall. The miners, the soldiers, the ranchers, they all needed their clothes cleaned, and she was the only laundress willing to work for rates low enough that even the poorest men could afford her services. Her mother had died of consumption 2 years ago, leaving Helena alone in this harsh world with nothing but a washboard, 3 large tubs, and a determination to survive that bordered on stubbornness. She'd moved from town to town across the territory, finally settling in Sierra Vista because the fort meant steady business. But steady business also meant endless work, and endless work meant her hands never healed. The cracks in her palms had become permanent fixtures, deep crevices that bled no matter how carefully she tried to protect them. She couldn't afford gloves. She couldn't afford anything except the bare minimum of food and the few supplies she needed to keep washing clothes. Helena dipped the shirt into the rinse water, watching as it turned pink from the blood seeping from her hands. She'd have to change the water again. That would be the 4th time today. She lifted her hands from the water and stared at them. They trembled from exhaustion, the skin raw and angry red, fresh blood welling from at least a dozen splits across her fingers and palms. She needed to keep working. Mrs. Patterson wanted her husband's shirts by evening, and the soldiers from the fort had dropped off another load this morning. If she didn't finish, she wouldn't eat tomorrow. She plunged her hands back into the water, biting her lip against the sting, and grabbed another shirt. The fabric felt like sandpaper against her wounded flesh. She managed 3 more strokes against the washboard before her vision blurred with tears, not from sadness but from pure physical pain. Still, she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. "Madam, I think you ought to rest a moment." The voice startled her so badly she dropped the shirt back into the tub, splashing soapy water across her already soaked apron. She looked up, shielding her eyes against the sun, and saw a tall figure standing at the edge of her work area. As her eyes adjusted, she made out a man in his mid-20s, wearing dusty chaps and a sweat-stained shirt. His hat was pushed back on his head, revealing sun-bronzed skin and dark hair. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, a warm brown that held genuine concern. "I'm working, sir." "Was there something you needed?" Helena kept her voice polite but firm. She didn't have time for interruptions. "I've been watching you for the past 10 minutes, the man said, stepping closer. "You're bleeding into that wash water. That can't be sanitary, and it sure as hell can't be good for you." Helena flushed, embarrassment mixing with irritation. "My hands are my own concern. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to finish." She reached for the shirt again, but suddenly the man was right there beside her, his hand gently but firmly catching her wrist before she could plunge her hands back into the water. His touch was surprisingly gentle for someone with such calloused hands. She looked up at him, ready to protest, but the words died in her throat when she saw his expression. He wasn't looking at her face. He was looking at her hands, and the horror in his eyes was unmistakable. "No more," he said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. "You can't keep doing this to yourself." "I don't have a choice," Helena said, trying to pull her hand back, but he held firm, turning her palm up to examine the damage. Blood dripped from several deep cracks, and the skin around them was swollen and raw. "There's always a choice," he said, finally meeting her eyes. "I'm Owen Xavier. I work the ranch about 5 miles north of here, and I'm telling you right now, you're not washing another piece of clothing today." "You have no right to tell me what to do," Helena said, but her voice lacked conviction. The relief of having her hands out of the water was so profound she felt lightheaded. "Maybe not," Owen agreed. "But I have eyes in my head and a conscience that won't let me walk away from someone hurting themselves like this." "When's the last time you ate?" The question caught her off guard. This morning I had some bread." "That was probably yesterday's bread, wasn't it? And not much of it." It wasn't really a question. Owen looked around her makeshift workspace, taking in the threadbare tent, the single bedroll visible inside, the lack of any real possessions. "You're working yourself to death for what? A few dollars a week." "It's enough to survive," Helena said defensively. "Surviving isn't living," Owen said. He released her wrist gently and removed his hat, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I know I'm being forward and I know you don't know me from Adam, but I can't just walk away. Let me help you." "I don't need charity," Helena said automatically. She'd heard those words before, from well-meaning church ladies who looked down their noses at her while offering day-old bread. Not charity. A job. Owen's words came quickly, as if he was making up his mind as he spoke. "The ranch where I work, the Double Bar X, we need someone at the main house. The owner, Mr. Thornton, his wife passed 6 months back. The place is falling apart. We need someone who can cook, clean, maybe help with some of the household management. It would pay better than this, and you'd have a real roof over your head." Helena stared at him, searching for the catch. There was always a catch. "Why would you offer that to a stranger?" "Because you're killing yourself here, and I can't stand by and watch it happen," Owen said simply. "Because those hands of yours need time to heal, and they never will if you keep doing this. Because everyone deserves a chance at something better than this." He gestured at the laundry tent, and Helena felt a surge of shame. This was her life, her business, meager as it was. But looking at it through his eyes, she saw how pathetic it must appear. One woman working alone, bleeding into wash water, living in a tent that would blow away in the first serious storm. "I don't know anything about ranching," she said weakly. "You don't need to. You'd be working in the house, not with the cattle. Can you cook?" "Yes." "Can you manage a household?" "I managed my mother's house before she died." "Then you can do this." Owen's certainty was almost contagious. "Please, at least come see the place before you decide. If you don't like it, I'll bring you back here myself, but give yourself a chance to heal." Helena looked down at her hands. Blood had dripped onto her apron, adding to the countless other stains there. She thought about tonight and tomorrow and the day after that. More clothes to wash, more pain, more bleeding, more barely scraping by. The thought of it stretching endlessly into the future made something break inside her chest. "All right," she heard herself say. "I'll look at it." Owen's face broke into a smile that transformed him from merely handsome to genuinely beautiful. "Thank you. Let me help you pack your things." "I should finish this load first," Helena said, but Owen shook his head firmly. "No more," he repeated. "You've done enough. More than enough. Is there someone in town who can handle these orders, Mrs. Chen, over on the east side, but she charges more than I do?" "I'll pay the difference," Owen said. "Come on, let's get you sorted." In the end, Helena didn't have much to pack. Her few clothes, her mother's Bible, a daguerreotype of her parents on their wedding day. Everything fit into a single carpet bag. Owen carried it for her, and he also insisted on stopping at the doctor's office before they left town. Dr. Morrison was a gruff older man who took one look at Helena's hands and let out a low whistle. "Young lady, these are infected. You're lucky you don't have blood poisoning." Can you fix them?" Owen asked, hovering nearby like a worried hen. "I can treat them if she promises to stop doing whatever caused this damage," Dr. Morrison said sternly, looking at Helena over his spectacles. "She promises," Owen said before Helena could respond. The doctor cleaned her hands with something that burned worse than the lye soap, then applied a thick salve and wrapped them in clean bandages. "Keep these dry and clean. Change the bandages twice daily. Come back in a week so I can check on them." "I'll make sure she does," Owen said, paying the doctor before Helena could even ask about the cost. Outside, 2 horses waited at the hitching post. One was a sturdy bay gelding, the other a gentler-looking mare. Owen helped Helena onto the mare, and she was grateful for his steadying hand because her legs shook from exhaustion and delayed shock. When had she last ridden a horse? Not since before her mother got sick, at least 2 years ago. The ride out to the ranch took about an hour. Owen kept his horse at an easy walk, occasionally glancing over at Helena to make sure she was managing. They talked little during the journey, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. Helena was too busy taking in the landscape, the wide open spaces so different from the cramped confines of her laundry tent. The sky seemed bigger out here, stretching endlessly overhead in a brilliant blue that hurt to look at. The Double Bar X Ranch appeared gradually on the horizon, starting with distant buildings that grew more distinct as they approached. The main house was a sprawling adobe structure with a covered porch that wrapped around 2 sides. Several outbuildings dotted the property, including a large barn, a bunkhouse, and various sheds. Cattle grazed in distant pastures, and Helena could see several men working near the corrals. "It's bigger than I expected," Helena said, her first words in nearly an hour. "Mr. Thornton's been building it up for 20 years, Owen explained. "He came out here right after the war, started with nothing but 100 head of cattle and a lot of determination. Now he's got one of the most successful operations in the territory." They rode up to the main house, and Owen helped Helena dismount. Her legs wobbled when her feet hit the ground, and Owen kept a steadying hand on her elbow until she found her balance. "Wait here," he said, and disappeared inside. Helena stood on the porch, feeling suddenly awkward and out of place. What was she doing here? She should be back in town, finishing those shirts, not standing at some ranch house pretending she could be something other than a struggling laundress. The door opened, and Owen emerged followed by a tall, weathered man in his 50s with steel gray hair and sharp blue eyes. This had to be Mr. Thornton. "So you're the young lady Owen's been telling me about," Thornton said, looking her over with an assessing gaze that wasn't unkind but was definitely thorough. "He says you need work, and God knows I need help around this place. What's your name, miss?" "Helena Vance, sir." "And you can cook and clean and manage a household?" "Yes, sir. I kept house for my mother until she passed 2 years ago." "Owen says your hands are in bad shape from laundry work." Helena instinctively tried to hide her bandaged hands behind her back, but Owen caught the movement and shook his head slightly. "They are, sir," she admitted. "But the doctor said they'll heal if I give them time." "Well, the work here won't be easy, but it won't tear up your hands like washing clothes will," Thornton said. "I'll be straight with you, Miss Vance. This house has been falling apart since my Martha died. None of us men know the first thing about proper housekeeping. We've been eating slop for months. The place is a mess, and I'm tired of living like a bachelor when I've got a perfectly good house here. I need someone who can bring some order to this chaos. In return, you'll have your own room, 3 meals a day, and $15 a month. That sound fair?" $15 a month was more than Helena usually made washing clothes, and the promise of regular meals and a real roof over her head made her throat tight with emotion. More than fair, sir. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Wait until you see the kitchen, Thornton said with a dry chuckle. Owen, show Miss Vance to the spare room. Let her get settled. We'll talk details over supper, assuming we can find something edible in that disaster of a pantry. The room Owen showed her to was small but clean, with a real bed, a dresser, and even a small mirror on the wall. To Helena, who'd been sleeping on a bedroll in a tent for months, it looked like a palace. I know it's not much, Owen said, setting her carpetbag on the bed. It's wonderful, Helena said honestly. I can't believe this is real. It's real, Owen assured her, and you deserve it. Now you should rest. Your hands need to heal and you look exhausted. I should start working, see what needs to be done, Helena protested. Tomorrow, Owen said firmly. Today you rest. That's an order. You're not my boss, Helena pointed out, but she was too tired to put much heat into it. No, but I'm the one who dragged you out here, so I'm responsible for making sure you don't overdo it right off, Owen said. Please, Helena, just rest today. The work will still be there tomorrow. The way he said her name, soft and concerned, made something warm bloom in her chest. She nodded, suddenly too tired to argue. Owen smiled and left, closing the door gently behind him. Helena sat on the bed, then lay back against the pillow. The mattress was soft, so much softer than the thin bedroll she'd been using. She meant to just rest for a moment, but exhaustion pulled her down into sleep within minutes. When she woke, the room was dark except for moonlight streaming through the window. Helena sat up, disoriented, her bandaged hands throbbing dully. How long had she slept? She stood and made her way to the window, looking out at the moonlit ranch. Everything was quiet, peaceful in a way she hadn't experienced in years. A soft knock on the door made her turn. Come in, she called. Owen entered, carrying a tray. I thought you might be hungry. You slept straight through supper. I'm so sorry, Helena said, mortified. Some first impression I'm making. You needed the rest, Owen said, setting the tray on the dresser. There's bread and cheese here and some beef stew I warmed up. It's not great, but it's edible. Thank you, Helena said. She realized she was ravenous. Will you stay while I eat, if that's not improper? Owen hesitated, then nodded. I'll stay by the door so it's all proper and respectable. He settled himself against the door frame while Helena attacked the food. It wasn't the best stew she'd ever had, but it was hot and filling and she couldn't remember the last time she'd had enough to eat. This is good, she said between bites. You're being kind. It's terrible. Which is why we're all so glad you're here, Owen said with a grin. But I'll take the compliment anyway. Why did you really help me? Helena asked suddenly. The truth, please. Owen was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful in the dim light. My mother worked herself to death, he finally said. Literally. She was a seamstress, took in more work than one person could handle because my father drank away every cent he earned. She worked until her hands bled, just like you. She worked until she collapsed one day and never got back up. I was 16. I'd been working odd jobs trying to help, but it wasn't enough. I watched her kill herself slowly and I couldn't stop it. Owen, I'm so sorry, Helena said softly. When I saw you today, bleeding into that wash water, still trying to work, I saw her, Owen continued. And I thought, not again. Not if I can help it. Maybe I can't change what happened to my mother, but I could help you, so I did. Helena set down her fork, her appetite forgotten. That's the kindest thing anyone's ever done for me. You deserve kindness, Owen said. Everyone does. They looked at each other across the small room and something passed between them, an understanding, a connection that went deeper than words. Helena felt it in her chest, warm and unsettling and wonderful all at once. I should let you rest, Owen said, pushing off from the door frame. Big day tomorrow. The house is going to keep you busy. Owen, Helena called as he reached for the door. He turned back. "Thank you for everything." He smiled, that beautiful transformative smile that made her heart skip. "Get some sleep, Helena." The next morning, Helena woke with the sun and immediately went to explore the kitchen. Owen hadn't been exaggerating. The place was a disaster. Dirty dishes were piled in the sink and on every available surface. The floor was caked with dried mud. The pantry was disorganized chaos, with supplies scattered haphazardly on shelves. But underneath the mess, she could see good bones. A solid cast iron stove, sturdy work surfaces, plenty of storage space. She rolled up her sleeves, mindful of her bandaged hands, and got to work. By the time the men started drifting in for breakfast, she had coffee brewing, bacon sizzling, and biscuits in the oven. Mr. Thornton was the first to appear, drawn by the smell of coffee. He stopped in the doorway, staring at the transformed kitchen with something like wonder on his weathered face. "Miss Vance, you're a miracle worker." "Just doing my job, sir," Helena said, pouring him a cup of coffee. Owen arrived next, along with 3 other ranch hands. They all stopped and stared at the food laid out on the now clean table. "Is that actual food?" one of them asked in amazement. "Sit down before it gets cold," Helena commanded, and they obeyed like schoolboys. Watching them eat the breakfast she'd prepared, seeing their obvious enjoyment and hearing their compliments, Helena felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Useful, valued, like she had a place in the world that was about more than just surviving day to day. Owen caught her eye from across the table and smiled, and she found herself smiling back. The days fell into a rhythm. Helena spent her mornings cooking breakfast and preparing lunch, her afternoons cleaning and organizing the house, and her evenings preparing supper. The work was hard but satisfying, and her hands, freed from constant immersion in harsh laundry water, began to heal. The cracks closed, the swelling went down, and the angry red faded to pink and then to healthy skin. Owen seemed to find excuses to be around the house more often than the other ranch hands. He'd volunteer to bring in wood for the stove, or stop by for an extra cup of coffee, or offer to help with tasks that were too heavy for Helena to manage. She found herself looking forward to these encounters, to the easy conversation that flowed between them, to his genuine interest in her thoughts and opinions. 2 weeks after her arrival, Owen found her in the garden behind the house, trying to salvage some vegetables from the overgrown tangle of weeds. He crouched down beside her without a word and started pulling weeds. "You don't have to help," Helena said, but she was smiling. "I know," Owen said. "But I want to. Tell me about your family. You've mentioned your mother, but what about your father?" Helena sat back on her heels, brushing dirt from her much-improved hands. "He died when I was 10. Mining accident. My mother never really recovered from losing him. She loved him so much, you see. After he died, it was like she was just going through the motions of living. When the consumption took her, part of me thought she was almost relieved. She'd be with him again." "That must have been hard for you, feeling like she wanted to leave," Owen said gently. "I understood it in a way. They had something special. The kind of love people write songs about," Helena said. "I used to think I'd never find something like that. Seemed like lightning striking, rare and magical." "Maybe not as rare as you think," Owen said, his eyes intent on hers. Helena's breath caught. The air between them suddenly felt charged with possibility, but before she could respond, Mr. Thornton's voice called from the house. "Owen, need you at the south pasture. We've got fence down." The moment broke. Owen stood, offering Helena a hand up. His touch lingered, warm and calloused and gentle, before he reluctantly let go. "Tonight," he said. "After supper. Will you take a walk with me?" "Yes," Helena said, her heart racing. The day seemed to drag endlessly after that. Helena threw herself into her work, preparing an elaborate supper of roasted chicken, potatoes, greens from the salvaged garden, and an apple pie made from dried apples she'd found in the pantry. The men praised every bite, but she barely tasted any of it. She was too aware of Owen sitting across the table, too conscious of the coming walk. Finally, the dishes were washed and put away, and Owen appeared at the kitchen door. "Ready for that walk," Helena nodded, removing her apron with trembling hands. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, heading away from the house toward a small rise that overlooked the ranch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks that seemed impossible, too vivid to be real. "This is my favorite spot on the whole ranch," Owen said as they stopped at the crest of the hill. "On clear nights, you can see more stars than you ever thought possible." "It's beautiful," Helena said. "I come here when I need to think," Owen continued. "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately." "About you." Helena's heart hammered so hard she was sure he must hear it. "What about me?" Owen turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "Helena, I know it's only been 2 weeks. I know that's not nearly enough time to really know someone, but I can't stop thinking about you. I wake up looking forward to seeing you at breakfast. I find excuses to come by the house just to hear your voice. When I'm out working, I catch myself wondering what you're doing, if you're happy, if your hands are still healing properly." "Owen," Helena whispered. "I'm not good with fancy words," Owen said. "I'm just a cowboy who works with cattle and horses, but I know what I feel, and what I feel for you is more than just gratitude or attraction. I think I'm falling in love with you, Helena Vance, and I needed you to know that." Helena felt tears prick her eyes, but they were good tears, joyful tears. "I've been thinking about you too, constantly. I tell myself I'm being foolish, that it's too soon, that you're just being kind. But then you look at me, really look at me like I matter, like you see me, and I feel something I've never felt before." "What do you feel?" Owen asked, stepping closer. "Safe," Helena said. "Valued, like I'm more than just someone who washes clothes or cooks meals, like I'm someone worth knowing, worth caring about." "You are," Owen said fiercely. "You're remarkable, Helena. Your strength, your determination, your kindness, even after life has been so hard on you. I've never met anyone like you." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face gently in his hands. His touch was reverent, careful, treating her like something precious. Helena leaned into it, closing her eyes at the sweetness of the gesture. "Can I kiss you?" Owen asked, his voice rough. "Please," Helena breathed. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, a question and an answer all at once. But as Helena responded, her hands coming up to rest against his chest, it deepened into something that felt inevitable and right and perfect. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "I'm going to marry you someday," he said. "If you'll have me. I know it's too soon to ask now, but I wanted you to know my intentions are honorable. I'm not playing games. This is real for me." "It's real for me too," Helena said. "And yes, someday I think I'd very much like to marry you, Owen Xavier." They stood there on that hilltop as the stars began to appear, holding each other, and Helena thought about her mother and father and the kind of love that people wrote songs about. Maybe it wasn't as rare as she'd thought. Maybe, just maybe, she'd found her own lightning strike. The weeks that followed were some of the happiest of Helena's life. She and Owen spent every possible moment together, always under proper supervision, always respecting the social conventions of the time. But those stolen moments, those conversations over coffee or walks after supper, built something solid between them. The other ranch hands teased Owen mercilessly about being lovesick, but he took it good-naturedly, never denying it. Mr. Thornton watched them with an approving eye, occasionally mentioning to Helena that Owen was the best man he'd ever hired, steady and reliable and honest as the day was long. Helena's hands healed completely, leaving only faint scars as reminders of her former life. The house transformed under her care. Curtains appeared in windows, flowers bloomed in planters on the porch, and every meal was something the men looked forward to. She found purpose and satisfaction in the work, but more than that, she found happiness in building a home. 3 months after arriving at the Double Bar X, Helena was kneading dough for bread when she heard shouting from outside. She wiped her hands and hurried to the window, her heart sinking at the commotion. Several men on horses were riding hard toward the house, and one of them was slumped over his saddle. She rushed outside just as they pulled up. Mr. Thornton was already there, helping the injured man down from his horse. With a jolt of pure terror, Helena realized it was Owen. What happened? She demanded, running to his side. Stampede, one of the other hands said. Spooked cattle. Owen was trying to turn them when his horse went down. The horse rolled on his leg. Owen's face was gray with pain, his jaw clenched tight. Blood soaked through his pants leg at the thigh. Get him inside, Mr. Thornton ordered. Miss Vance, we need hot water and clean cloths. Someone ride for the doctor. They carried Owen into the house and laid him on the kitchen table, the closest flat surface. Helena forced herself to think through the panic, to move with purpose. She'd tended her mother through illness. She could do this. She had to do this. She cut away his pants leg, revealing a deep gash that was bleeding steadily. Not arterial, thank God, but bad enough. She cleaned it as best she could, pressing cloths against it to slow the bleeding while Owen gritted his teeth and tried not to cry out. I'm sorry, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, I know it hurts. Not your fault, Owen managed. Just bad luck, doctor. Morrison arrived what felt like hours later but was probably only 45 minutes. He examined the wound, declared that Owen had been lucky. The cut was clean and hadn't hit anything vital. He stitched it up while Helena held Owen's hand, feeling his bones grind together as he fought to stay still and quiet. He'll need to stay off that leg for at least 2 weeks, the doctor said. And someone will need to check the wound daily, change the dressings, watch for infection. I'll do it, Helena said immediately. I figured you would, Dr. Morrison said with a knowing look. Keep it clean and dry. If he develops a fever, send for me immediately. They moved Owen to his room in the bunkhouse, but Helena wouldn't hear of leaving him there with just the other ranch hands to look after him. With Mr. Thornton's permission, they moved him to a spare room in the main house, where Helena could properly tend to him. Those 2 weeks tested them both. Owen was a terrible patient, restless and frustrated at being confined to bed. Helena was equally frustrated trying to keep him still and following doctor's orders. But through the irritation and worry, their bond deepened. Helena read to him from the newspapers and dime novels the other hands brought. Owen told her stories about his childhood, about his mother and his worthless father, about the day he left home at 16 and never looked back. I want to give you everything I never had, Owen said one evening as Helena changed his bandages. The wound was healing cleanly, much to her relief. A real home, security, the knowledge that someone will always be there for you. You've already given me that, Helena said softly. Just by being you, by seeing me when I was invisible, by caring when no one else did. Marry me, Owen said suddenly. Helena's hand stilled on the bandage she was tying. What? I know I said someday, but I can't wait anymore. Life is unpredictable. Accidents happen. I could have died today, and I would have died without making you my wife. I don't want to waste another day. Marry me, Helena, please. Helena looked at him, This man who had changed her entire life with a simple act of kindness, who had seen her suffering and refused to let it continue, who loved her with an intensity that both scared and thrilled her. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." Owen pulled her down for a kiss that was fierce and claiming and full of promise. When they broke apart, both of them were grinning like fools. "As soon as I can walk without limping, we'll go into town and talk to the minister," Owen said. "As soon as the doctor clears you," Helena corrected. "I didn't nurse you back to health just to have you injure yourself again." "Yes, madam," Owen said meekly, but his eyes sparkled with joy. True to her word, Helena made Owen wait until Dr. Morrison pronounced him fully healed before they made the trip into Sierra Vista. The minister, a kindly man named Reverend Hatch, was happy to perform the ceremony. They set the date for 3 weeks out, giving Helena time to prepare. The other ranch hands were thrilled, immediately planning a celebration. Even Mr. Thornton seemed pleased, clapping Owen on the shoulder and telling him he was getting a treasure of a wife. But he pulled Helena aside one evening with a serious expression. "Miss Vance, I need to have a frank conversation with you," he said. Helena's heart sank. Was he upset about the marriage? Would she lose her position? "Owen is like a son to me," Thornton continued. "I never had children, and since he came to work here 5 years ago, he's become family. I want to give you both a wedding present." He handed her an official-looking document. Helena unfolded it carefully, scanning the legal language, and gasped. "This is a deed to land. 20 acres on the eastern edge of my property," Thornton confirmed. "Good grazing land with a creek running through it. Enough for Owen to start building his own herd, his own ranch someday if that's what you both want. Or you can stay here and work for me and use it however you like. Either way, it's yours, both of yours." Helena felt tears welling up. "Mr. Thornton, this is too generous." "It's what Martha would have wanted," Thornton said gruffly. "She always said this place needed young people, needed love and life. You've brought that back to this house, Miss Vance. It's worth more than 20 acres to me. Besides, Owen has earned it 10 times over with his hard work and loyalty." Helena threw her arms around the older man in an impulsive hug. He stiffened for a moment, then patted her back awkwardly. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." The 3 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Helena made herself a simple but beautiful dress from fabric the other ranch hands pitched in to buy. It was ivory cotton with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs, and when she tried it on, she felt like a princess. She had no family to invite, but the ranch had become her family. These men who had welcomed her, who appreciated her cooking and her care of their home, would be her witnesses. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright. Helena woke early, too excited to sleep, and went to the kitchen out of habit. She found Mr. Thornton already there, drinking coffee. "No cooking today," he said firmly. "Today you're getting married. The men and I will handle meals." "I don't know what to do with myself if I'm not working," Helena admitted. "Get used to it," Thornton said with a rare smile. "Every bride deserves to be pampered on her wedding day." In the end, Helena spent the morning bathing in water hauled and heated by the ranch hands, washing her hair until it shone, and carefully dressing in her new gown. She had no mother or sister to help her, but the wife of one of the neighboring ranchers came over to assist, pinning up Helena's hair and declaring her beautiful. The ceremony was held in the small church in Sierra Vista. It seemed like half the town had come, drawn by curiosity about the laundress who had caught the eye of one of the most eligible cowboys in the territory. Helena walked down the aisle on Mr. Thornton's arm, her eyes locked on Owen waiting at the altar. He looked devastatingly handsome in a new suit, his hair slicked back, his face clean-shaven. but it was the expression in his eyes that made her breath catch. Pure love, pure joy, pure certainty that this was right and meant to be. Reverend Hatch performed the ceremony with warmth and sincerity. Helena barely heard the words, too focused on Owen's hands holding hers, on his voice as he repeated his vows, strong and clear and sure. When it came time for her vows, she spoke from the heart. I promise to love you, to stand beside you through whatever comes, to build a life and a home with you. You saved me, Owen, in every way a person can be saved. I will spend the rest of my life showing you how grateful I am, how much I love you. There wasn't a dry eye in the church. Even the rough cowboys from the ranch were discreetly wiping at their faces. I now pronounce you man and wife, Reverend Hatch said. Owen, you may kiss your bride. And he did, thoroughly and enthusiastically, to the hoots and applause of everyone present. The celebration afterward was held at the ranch, with food and music and dancing that lasted well into the night. Helena had never been to a party in her honor before, had never been the center of joyful attention. It was overwhelming and wonderful all at once. Finally, as the evening wound down and the guests began to depart, Owen took her hand and led her away from the main house to a small cabin that sat at the edge of the property. When did this get here? Helena asked in amazement. The cabin hadn't existed a week ago. Wedding present from the boys, Owen said. They've been building it in their spare time. It's not much yet, just one room, but it's ours. Private. Somewhere we can start our life together. Inside, the cabin was simple but clean, with a bed, a table and chairs, a small stove, and even curtains at the window. Someone had left wildflowers in a jar on the table. Owen closed the door behind them and gathered Helena into his arms. Hello, Mrs. Xavier. Hello, Mr. Xavier, Helena said, smiling up at him. I love you, Owen said seriously. I need you to know that. This isn't just gratitude or attraction or convenience. I love you with everything I am. I love you too, Helena said. I never thought I'd find this. Someone who sees me, truly sees me and loves what they see. You're my miracle, Owen. No, Owen said, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. You're mine. That night, they came together as man and wife, and Helena discovered that love could be expressed not just in words and gestures, but in touch and passion, and a physical joining that felt sacred and profound. In Owen's arms, she felt cherished and desired and completely safe. The scars on her hands, the memories of pain and struggle, all of it faded in the face of this overwhelming rightness. Life as a married woman suited Helena. She continued her work at the main house with Mr. Thornton's blessing, but now she had her own home to return to each evening. She and Owen fell into an easy domestic routine, cooking meals together, talking about their days, making plans for the future. True to Mr. Thornton's prediction, Owen did want to build his own ranch someday. They spent evenings discussing how to use the 20 acres, how many cattle they could support initially, what kind of house they'd build. Nothing too big, Owen said. Just something solid and comfortable, with a real kitchen for you and a porch where we can sit in the evenings. And room for children, Helena added shyly. Owen's face lit up. How many children are we talking about? However many God blesses us with, Helena said. I always wanted a big family. I was lonely as an only child. Then we'll fill that house with babies, Owen promised, pulling her close. As many as you want. The first baby came 10 months after their wedding, arriving during a spring thunderstorm in 1879. Dr. Morrison barely made it in time, and Helena labored through the night with Owen holding her hand, looking nearly as scared as she felt. But when the baby finally arrived, a squalling, red-faced boy with Owen's dark hair, all the pain was forgotten. What should we name him? Helena asked, cradling the infant against her chest. Oliver, Owen said immediately. After my mother's father. He was the only person in her family who stood by her when things got hard. Oliver Xavier, Helena said, testing the name. It's perfect. Oliver was an easy baby, content and cheerful, and Helena managed to balance caring for him with her work at the main house. Mr. Thornton was besotted with the child, often volunteering to watch him so Helena could work. The other ranch hands were equally charmed, and Oliver was passed around like a beloved mascot. When Oliver was 18 months old, Helena discovered she was expecting again. This pregnancy was harder than the first, leaving her exhausted and nauseated for months. Owen worried constantly, trying to get her to rest more, to let go of some of her duties. I'm fine, Helena insisted, though she definitely didn't feel fine. You're working too hard, Owen countered. We need to hire someone to help at the main house. You need to focus on staying healthy and growing our baby. In the end, they compromised. A young woman from town, recently widowed and needing work, was hired to assist at the main house. Helena trained her and still oversaw the household, but the physical burden was shared. It made a significant difference. The second baby, a girl they named Harriet after Helena's mother, arrived in the spring of 1881. She was smaller than Oliver had been, but fierce from the start, with a lusty cry that could wake the dead. Helena fell in love instantly. We make beautiful babies, Owen said, looking down at his daughter with wonder. We do, Helena agreed, exhausted but happy. By this time, Owen had been steadily building up a small herd on their 20 acres. He still worked for Mr. Thornton, but more as a ranch manager now than a regular hand. Thornton relied on him for major decisions, and the older man's health had begun to decline. He'd suffered a minor stroke the previous winter and had never fully recovered his strength. One evening, Thornton called Owen and Helena to the main house. He looked tired but determined as he gestured them to sit. I need to talk to you both about the future, he said without preamble. I'm not getting any younger, and that stroke was a warning. I don't have much family left, just a nephew back east who's never shown any interest in ranching. I want to know that this place, this land I've built up over 20 years, goes to someone who'll care for it properly. Sir, Owen started, but Thornton held up a hand. I'm not dead yet, so stop looking so worried, but I've had my lawyer draw up papers. When I die, the double bar X goes to you, Owen, all of it. The land, the cattle, the buildings. Everything. It should have been my son's if Martha and I had been blessed with children. Since we weren't, it should go to the closest thing to a son I've got. Helena felt tears streaming down her face. Owen looked stunned, unable to speak. I don't know what to say, he finally managed. Say you'll take care of it, Thornton said. Say you'll build on what I started. Say you'll raise those beautiful children of yours here and teach them to love this land the way I do. I promise, Owen said, his voice thick with emotion. I swear to you I'll honor what you've built. That's all I needed to hear, Thornton said, looking satisfied. Mr. Thornton lived another 3 years, long enough to see the birth of Helena and Owen's third child, a boy they named Henry, and to watch Oliver grow into a lively 5-year-old who followed his father everywhere. He passed peacefully in his sleep one winter night in 1884, and they buried him next to his beloved Martha on a hillside overlooking the ranch. True to his word, Thornton had left everything to Owen. It was overwhelming, inheriting such a successful operation, but Owen rose to the challenge. With Helena by his side, they expanded the ranch, hired more hands, and increased the cattle herds. Their own small cabin had long since been replaced by a larger house on their original 20 acres, but they kept the main house as well, using it as the center of ranch operations. The years passed in a blur of hard work, joy, and the occasional heartbreak. They lost a fourth baby in infancy, a daughter born too early who never drew breath. Helena grieved deeply, and Owen held her through the darkest days, reminding her that they still had 3 healthy children who needed them. Oliver grew into a serious, responsible young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. Harriet was fierce and independent, learning to ride almost before she could walk, more at home on horseback than anywhere else. Henry was the dreamer, always with his nose in a book, talking about seeing the world beyond their ranch. By 1890, when Helena was 35 and Owen 37, they had added 2 more children to their family. Twin girls, Ada and Alice, who were 4 years old and kept everyone on their toes with their matching mischief. One evening, Helena stood on the porch of their house, watching the sun set over land that was now theirs in every sense of the word. Owen came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Everything," Helena said. "Where I was 13 years ago, where we are now, how impossible all of this would have seemed back then." "Do you ever regret it?" Owen asked. "Giving up your independence, tying yourself to me in this place?" Helena turned in his arms to face him. "Not for one single second. Owen, you gave me everything, a home, a family, a life worth living. I was dying slowly in that laundry tent and you saved me." "You saved me too," Owen said. "I was just existing before you, working, eating, sleeping, but not really living. You brought color and meaning and joy into my life. You made me whole." "We made each other whole," Helena said, reaching up to cup his face. "That's what love does." They kissed as the sun painted the sky in brilliant colors. 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. In the years that followed, their children grew and flourished. Oliver eventually took over day-to-day operations of the ranch, marrying a sweet girl from town and starting his own family. Harriet shocked everyone by announcing she was going to medical school, determined to become a doctor like the doctor. Morrison, who had treated her father and delivered her and her siblings. Henry got his wish to see the world, traveling east to attend university and eventually becoming a teacher. The twins, inseparable as ever, both married brothers from a neighboring ranch and stayed close to home, their children growing up together just as they had through it all. Helena and Owen remained each other's constants. They grew older together, their hair graying, their bodies moving a bit slower, but their love never diminishing. If anything, it deepened with time, becoming something rich and comfortable and enduring. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1908, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. There were dozens of people now, multiple generations, all stemming from the union of a desperate laundress and a compassionate cowboy. Helena looked around at all of them, at the life she and Owen had built, and felt overwhelming gratitude. They'd had their share of hardships over the years. Droughts and harsh winters, cattle lost to disease, financial struggles and personal sorrows. But they'd faced it all together, and together they'd built something that would last long beyond their own lives. That evening, as the party wound down and the younger children were carried off to bed, Helena and Owen walked together to the old hillside where Owen had first told her he loved her. The stars were out in full force, just as bright as they'd been all those years ago. "If you could go back," Owen asked, "back to that day in Sierra Vista when I found you bleeding into that wash water, would you change anything?" "Not a single thing," Helena said firmly. "Every moment of pain, every struggle, they all led me to you. They were all worth it." "No more," Owen said softly, echoing the words he'd spoken so long ago. "No more pain, no more struggle, Just us and this life we've built and whatever time we have left to enjoy it. Just us, Helena agreed, leaning into his embrace. That's all I need. They stood there together under the vast Arizona sky, two souls who had found each other in the harsh landscape of the Wild West and chosen love over hardship, hope over despair, together over alone. Their story had started with bleeding hands and a cowboy's compassion, but it had grown into something neither of them could have imagined. A legacy of love that would echo through generations. As they walked back to the house hand in hand, the lights glowing warmly in the windows, Helena reflected on the truth she'd learned over 3 decades of marriage. Love wasn't just the lightning strike moment when you first realized your feelings. It was also the steady work of building a life together, day by day, year by year. It was choosing each other over and over, through good times and hard times, through joy and sorrow. Owen squeezed her hand and she looked up at him, seeing both the young cowboy who had saved her and the older man he'd become, and loving every version of him she'd known. "I love you," she said. "I love you too," Owen replied. "Always have, always will." And that, Helena thought, was the truest promise anyone could make. Not that life would be easy or perfect, but that whatever came, they would face it together. That was the real happily ever after, not a fairy tale ending but a conscious choice made every day to love and be loved in return. The ranch continued to thrive under Oliver's management, and Helena and Owen gradually stepped back from the day-to-day operations, content to watch their legacy flourish. They spent their later years surrounded by children and grandchildren, passing on stories and wisdom, and enjoying the peaceful contentment that came from a life well lived. When Owen passed away in 1918 at the age of 65, his heart finally giving out after a long and full life, Helena mourned deeply, but not with despair. She had been blessed with 40 years of love, and that was more than many people ever got. She lived another 7 years, surrounded by family, still sharp-minded and quick-witted until the very end, when she died peacefully in her sleep in 1925 at the age of 70. Her children buried her next to Owen on that same hillside where he'd first declared his love. The entire community turned out for the funeral, testament to the impact she and Owen had made on everyone around them. Their story became a treasured family legend, passed down through generations. The story of how a cowboy saw a woman in pain and refused to look away. How a simple act of compassion had blossomed into a love that built an empire. The Double Bar X Ranch remained in the family for over 100 years, and every generation was told the story of Helena and Owen, of bleeding hands and gentle care, of no more spoken with conviction and love. And if you visited that ranch on quiet evenings, standing on the hillside where two people were buried side by side, you could almost feel the love that had started there so many years ago. It lingered in the air like a blessing, a reminder that even in the harshest of times and places, love could flourish. That one moment of compassion could change the course of multiple lives. That sometimes, when you're at your lowest point, salvation arrives in the form of someone who simply refuses to let you suffer alone. Helena had worked until her hands bled, and Owen had taken them gently and said no more. That moment had been the beginning of everything, the foundation upon which they built a life, a family, and a love that truly was the kind people wrote songs about. In the end, that was all that mattered. Not the hardships they'd overcome or the success they'd achieved, but the love they'd shared and the family they'd created. That was the real treasure, the true legacy they left behind. Their great-great-grandchildren still lived on the ranch in the modern age, still told the story, still felt the presence of that enduring love in the land itself. And sometimes, on clear nights when the stars seemed especially bright, they'd walk up to that hillside and thank Helena and Owen for having the courage to reach for love when it appeared, for building something that lasted, for showing them all what true love looked like. It looked like bleeding hands cradled gently, like a firm "no more" spoken with compassion, like two people choosing each other against all odds and never looking back, like a laundress who became a ranch owner's wife and a cowboy who saw beyond circumstances to the woman beneath. Like 30 years of marriage and 40 years of love and a legacy that would never be forgotten, that was their story. That was their gift to all who came after. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.